Welcome to Stormin Chocolate. I'm Stormin Norman. On this episode of Songs I Love is song number 8, which is the Moving in Stereo Suite, as I call it, by The Cars from the album The Cars. The Moving in Stereo Suite, as I like to call it, is not actually designed to be a suite. It's actually the last 4 songs of 9 on the album, and on the album, the actual LP, it's all of side 2. So The Cars was a wonderful debut album. It's really up there with some of the great debut albums of all time, like Led Zeppelin's first album, ELP's first album, Boston's first album, Pink Floyd's Piper at the Gates of Dawn, The Doors' first album, Van Halen's first album, GNR's Appetite for Destruction, and Jimmy's Are You Experienced. All great albums. In my book, The Cars' debut album is slightly better than Boston's debut album. There's more hit songs, there's less fluff on it, and maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact that I really enjoy this suite of 4 songs. I really like the Foreplay Long Time suite from Boston's first album, but the reason why it was higher on this list, even though the list isn't in any particular order, except that the first 3 songs are videos on YouTube that I watched a lot. But taken out of context of this list, I like the Moving in Stereo suite more than I like Foreplay Long Time. So that raises the Cars album up slightly higher than Boston's first album. The Cars' first album was released in the middle of 1978. It reached number 18 on the US charts, so it was a relatively good debut album compared to other artists. Currently, the album is certified as 6 times platinum, which means it sold at least 6 million copies here in the US alone, and it sold additional copies around the world, but that's not important since we're in America.
Ouch.
All songs of the album were written by Rick Ocasek, who is the part-time lead singer. He shares that duty with Benjamin Orr and plays rhythm guitar, except for Moving in Stereo, which was co-written with Greg Hawkes, who is the keyboard player. Elliot Easton plays lead guitar, David Robinson plays drums, and Benjamin Orr, as I just mentioned, also sings lead and plays bass. The first single released from the album was Just What I Needed, and it peaked at number 24. The second single from the album was My Best Friend's Girl, which went up to number 35. That said, it also reached number 3 in the UK and remains as the highest charting Cars song in that country. The third single from the album was Let the Good Times Roll, and no other songs from the album were released as A-side singles. Some of the songs, like Moving in Stereo, were released as the B-sides of those 3 A-side singles I just mentioned. So the suite consists of the following songs. You're All I've Got Tonight, which is song 6 on the album, and Rick Ocasek is singing it. That's important because the next 3 songs are all sung by Ben Orr. The second song in the suite, which is the 7th song on the album, is Bye Bye Love, not to be confused with the Everly Brothers song of the same name. It's not a remake, it's a completely new song. The third song of the suite, which is the 8th song on the album, is Moving in Stereo, from which this suite gets its name. And the final song in the suite, which is the 9th and final song on the album, is All Mixed Up. The reason that this is a suite for me is that most of the songs run together naturally. There's no silence between them, or there is a very small gap. For example, here in the transition between song 1 and song 2, you have a very small gap like you have in Queen's We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. And here's a glimpse of the transition between songs 2 and 3. And here's a glimpse of the transition between songs 3 and 4. So as you can hear, there is no real gap between the two. They just kind of run together. And in my mind, the first song actually just feeds into the second song very naturally. It's almost like there is no gap. And so you have 4 songs that go well together. The first song, You're All I've Got Tonight. You're All I've Got Tonight. Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat. She sells seashores down by the seashore. The first song, You're All I've Got Tonight, is a modified limerick structure where in a limerick, a traditional limerick, you've got the first two lines and the fifth line rhyming at the end, and then the two shorter lines in the middle rhyme with each other. That's not as strict as the other way, but in this modified structure for this song, the first two lines rhyme with each other. The last line, the fifth line, actually rhymes with the previous two. The two shorter lines both end in I don't care, and the fifth line ends with anywhere. So that's true of all three stanzas in the song. In this song, the drums are prominent and they're persistent, like the drummer has someplace to be and just continuously drives the song forward. All of the instruments are basically at the same level, so they kind of subtly drown out the lead vocal by Rick. That may be how I am interpreting it, but Rick's voice is very different from Ben's. So it may be that it's thinner and at a higher register than Ben's, which is more of a good deep baritone. In this song, the bass is not very prominent, but he'll get his day in the next songs. The gist of this song is that the boyfriend is letting his girlfriend get away with whatever she wants because he's very needy tonight, and whatever she does is okay as long as she hangs him.
What?
Whatever she ends up doing, it's okay. I don't care. I just want you to be with me tonight. The song ends abruptly with the vocal, I need you, and then the band sings tonight, and then that's when it stops and we get that transition between that and Bye Bye Love. You're All I've Got Tonight is fairly straightforward. The lyrics make a lot of sense. However, once we get into Bye Bye Love, that's not really the case. The lyrics border on an obsessive boyfriend along with a slight acid trip. Now, I'm not speaking from experience in either case, but that's kind of the way it sounds. We get some very odd lyrics. As an example, the third line of the first stanza says, "It's such a wavy midnight, you slip into insane." Now, you might think, pun intended.
But why is it pun intended?
Because the Cars have another song from a later album called You Might Think. That said, you might think that this is out of context and weird because it's out of context. However, everything else in the lyrics are similar. You could take any line out of it and present it, and they don't actually go together. As a matter of fact, in the chorus, it starts with, "It's an orangey sky, always with another guy." When does that ever make sense? What does an orangey sky mean? Now, there are some cases where it could be close when we're talking about mariners who look at red skies at night and red skies at morning. But I don't think they're doing that there. If they are, that would be really cool and very surprising. Even though the lyrics are weird, they're fun to sing. And singing along for us, me being a bass and Ben being a baritone, he's very close to the register, and I love singing along when Ben is singing. He does some interesting things when he sings along. So in the chorus, when the backing vocals are singing one thing, he's singing the same thing, but he's singing up and down. He rises and he falls, and he's not singing along exactly the way they are. And it's not something that changes in the later iterations of the chorus. It's all the time. He's just all over the place, and that's just a lot of fun. Additionally, he changes the dynamics in the second and third stanza where he's yelling more in that third stanza, which is kind of a repetition of the first stanza. And then when you get to the chorus after that, he's mellow again and he's much more resigned. So he's kind of changed his emotional state between the two. And again, that's very fun to hear. The end of Bye Bye Love is a long instrumental piece. And it ends with an abrupt ending, and there's a false end, which is, again, kind of fun, where it goes da-da-dun, da-da-dun, and you might think, okay, that's the end. But no, that's a false end, because the real end does that 3.5 times, and then the music cuts out, and then you immediately hear the glissandoing of the synthesizer that's very, very soft. And the song Moving in Stereo starts from that transition. Moving in stereo throughout the course of the song keeps adding layers of instruments to the music, except for an abrupt change at the end of the first stanza where the whole band comes in. But it keeps adding layers and layers throughout and builds up. It's not really a bolero type of addition because a lot of the instruments are coming in and playing a counter melody, which sometimes happens in a bolero and sometimes doesn't happen in a bolero. But traditionally, I wouldn't think of it as a bolero. It's just something I noticed as I was re-listening to the song, writing the script. The song has a simple structure where it has 2 stanzas before the bridge, and then it repeats the same 2 stanzas after the bridge. The bridge is what I call the area in the center of the lyrics that separates the 2 stanzas from each other, and the 2 stanzas are actually repeated. So the 2 that happened before are just repeated after the bridge. And the bridge is just a different structure. It's fewer words per lines. It's still 4 lines, but there's no key change going from one to the other.
What?
There's no key change going from one side to the other, as you typically get in a bridge. Now, the lyrics are about what seems to be a conversation with a depressive person, somebody who has some kind of disorder currently, and they're down in the dumps and they can't take what's going on. Now, the singer is playing mind games with the depressive person that he's singing to. For example, the first line, "Life's the same, I'm moving in stereo," and as that happens, the singer moves from one side of the speaker set to the other side. And later on, 2 lines later, he says, "I'm shaking like tremolo." And then his voice kind of wavers just a little bit. So he's not the nicest guy, but that's the way that it goes. So the lyrics aren't too deep. And as I mentioned before, there's not a whole lot of lyrics to this song, but it's got a driving beat and it just keeps hammering along throughout the end of the song. And at the very end, the vocal says, "It's all inside you." And it rises up at the end like this person who was maybe the devil on your shoulder. It's like flying away back to hell. That's kind of the way it feels to me. And after the voice goes up, then all of the instruments glissando up to a very high note, and then they end at that point, and you start hearing the cymbal taps of All Mixed Up, the final song in this suite. All Mixed Up starts very softly with cymbal taps keeping time and either the bass or low bass on the guitar just giving a rhythm going up and down and following around. And occasionally there's either the lead guitar or the rhythm guitar playing a counter melody. And once that's established, then Ben's voice comes in and he sings the first stanza to this particular musical sequence. At the end of that, when he sings the last line of the first stanza, then the whole band comes in and it really starts rocking at that point. It's not like rock and roll, but it's still kind of very mellow, hard-hitting, pounding rock or pop rock. So what Ben is actually singing about in the song, in the lyrics, is that his girlfriend, his woman, is not treating him correctly. She's not doing the things she should do. For example, one of his complaints is she never leaves the light on. Like when he's coming home from work and it's dark and he needs to see the front door, she never turns the light on. They don't have an automatic light, so it's up to her to do that kind of task. But it's a lot of these little complaints about her, and he's kind of like, well, he's just voicing his opinion at the time. And then we get to the chorus, and the chorus turns the tables. And he says, and she says, "Everything will be all right. Don't worry. It'll be okay. Just trust me." And so that's kind of the way the song is. Too many uhs. The song has an AABAB structure where each of the stanzas has a list of complaints, as I said, and then it ends, each of them ends with 3 repetitions of the line, "It's all mixed up." And that's what he's saying. He's saying, we should be working together here, but she's not doing this stuff, or she's doing this stuff, which I don't want, and it's all mixed up. This relationship is coming to an end. I don't know what's going on. And then we get to the chorus. So in the chorus, Ben is singing the main line, which is, she says, "Leave it to me, everything will be all right." And then the backing vocals repeat the last 4 or the last 3 syllables. So he sings, she says, "Leave it to me," and the backing vocals say, "Leave it to me," and then he sings, everything will be all right. And he tries to hit this high note, which let's say he makes it. And the backing vocals say, be all right. And then this continues throughout the chorus. So that's the way it goes. Now, at the end of the song, where we have the extended chorus, this goes on a lot and it interleaves and it changes a little bit, but it's basically that, let's call it a challenge or response between the lead and the backing vocals. And that's the kind of way it goes until you end the lyrics, end the singing, and you just have instrumentals playing at the end of it. And as an added treat, we have Greg Hawkes, the keyboard player, coming in with playing rock saxophone to lead you out until the song fades. And this is the only place where you have a good fade out from one of these 4 songs.
And on a director's note, that's my favorite part of the entire thing, how it ends. The saxophone was a completely nuts choice that totally works, and I was not expecting that when listening to the song, and it seems really out of place, but it makes it so much better.
So I didn't think it was actually a saxophone when I heard the first couple of notes, because I didn't think there were any sax players in the band. I was pleasantly surprised when I read the album liner notes and saw that Greg Hawkes was credited as playing the saxophone. I was looking down in the additional musicians section, but there weren't any additional musicians. Everybody was playing all the instruments on the album. So again, that was a pleasant surprise. So that's the Moving in Stereo suite, or as some people would call it, the second half of the Cars' first album. Song number 8 then is 4 full-length songs stitched together as side 2 of the Cars' first album. It's no surprise then that the song is 17 and a half minutes long, and this video covering the entire suite is as long as it is. We won't know how long it is until after we do the editing.
Until after I do the editing.
I do some editing. God. Coming up next time, we will be witnesses as she moves through the fair with Mike Oldfield as we become Voyagers. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.